According to the multi-component model of working memory, a working memory model is vital for resourceful intellect. According to the dual pathway model, triggering instead of disengaging moods increases working memory capacity, allowing for greater cognitive suppleness. Short-range memory is also called the working memory. As an alternative to all data being stored in one place, various structures exist for diverse kinds of info. The phonological loop and the visuospatial sketchpad are two substructures that run the entire structure. It also covers thinking skills, including mental calculation and problem resolving. The phonological loop is a part of the operational memory classical that covers the oral and written information. It is alienated into two parts, the phonological store, which stores dialogue-based info, and the articulatory mechanism, which permits one to echo vocal info in a loop. On the other hand, the visuospatial sketchpad is a portion of the working memory model that keeps and progressions graphical and longitudinal data. The steering is done with the visuospatial sketchpad. According to Baddeley and Hitch, the multi-store model was unsuccessful by failing to describe much of the nuances of mortal remembrance and was too basic. They claim that the short-term memory store, being a single obstinate store, should have additional constituents. Consequently, the working memory model is a refinement of the multi-store model. Working memory, agreeing to Baddeley and Hitch, is a partial volume facility for storing and processing data. The working memory is alienated into four distinct elements, and about them, each contributes to memory progressions. The phonological loop, visuospatial sketchpad, episodic buffer, and central executive are the four. The phonological loop's principal function is to stock abstract symbols of hearing knowledge. It has a small storage space and only stores data in the form of vocal data. It is additionally alienated into two constituents, the articulatory rehearsal structure, which has a volume of 2 seconds and is connected to the vocal output, and the articulatory preparation structure, which has a volume of 2 seconds and practices knowledge vocally. To understand this phenomenon, Baddeley redefined the idea of short-term memory as working memory. According to the original theory of short-term memory, an individual has only one collection of abrupt data dispensation, which can only contain a total of 7 objects, positive or negative 2 objects, all of which must be processed in a brief period, often seconds. A great example of a calculation for classically determined short-term memory is the digit span test. In other words, if the 7 plus or minus 2 things cannot be encoded inside a few minutes by discovering an established suggestion with the data to be translated into long-standing memory, the data is mislaid and not ever programmed. There may also be a misconception here about the distinctions between temporary memories like visual sensory memory. A short memory is a form of sensory memory that lasts just a few seconds. As a result, since visual sensory memory is a type of sensory memory, the information is stored only for a fraction of a second. Individuals can recall seeing things that weren't there or forgetting specific things in their line of sight due to their visual sensory memory. The memory is fleeting, and if it isn't acted on in a matter of seconds, it will vanish. The dorsal stream is the visual pathway in the brain that senses a person's spatial representation to and within their surroundings. The ventral stream is the visual conduit that specifies object shapes, sizes, colors, and other distinguishing characteristics. In a case study conducted by Fang et al., experimentations used a simulated maze and a dual-task paradigm to examine the phonological loop and visuospatial sketchpad position in wayfinding. Experimentation was set up to see how sexual characteristics and investigational circumstances, control, phonological dual-task, and visuospatial dual-task groups, affected wayfinding efficiency. The findings indicated that dual-task crowds took longer to finish the principal undertaking compared to the regulator crowd, and masculine participants traveled substantially quicker than feminine partakers. Feminine partakers accounted for the majority of the disparities among the dual-task and regulator groups, although masculine partakers were largely unaffected by the minor responsibilities. Experimentation 2 was performed to see how the two dual-task circumstances affected masculine partakers' wayfinding as the complexity of the minor responsibilities maximized, to learn more about the impact of dual-task surroundings on masculine partakers. Wayfinding presentation in dual-task crowds was seen to be substantially worsened as compared to the regulator crowd. In addition, there was no discernible distinction among the two forms of double tasks. According to the article, their research found that both the phonological loop and the visuospatial sketchpad were important in wayfinding, and that breaking the male's benefit involved more difficult minor responsibilities. A fourth aspect, the episodic buffer, was introduced to the classic in the last era to interment a variety of spectacles correlated to short-range and long-standing memory experiences that couldn't be described inside the unusual structure. The essential inspiration for including this aspect was discovering that certain, particularly intellectual, patients with amnesia, despite the lacking the capacity to store new information in long-standing memory, they had excellent short-range memory of stories, remembering additional data phonological loop might hold. Mindful entry to the phonological loop or sketchpad can work through the buffer, it is presumed. This is grounded on the idea that the visuospatial sketchpad and the phonological loop both act as negligible buffers, integrating data within their sensual areas. The episodic buffer can relate to the senses of odor and flavor as well. Baddeley's model's strength is its ability to incorporate a vast range of short-term and working memory research results. Furthermore, the slave system's mechanisms, especially the phonological loop, have sparked a plethora of studies in experimental psychology, neuropsychology, and cognitive neuroscience. However, some criticisms have been leveled, for example, at the phonological loop portion, since some aspects of the results are difficult to understand using the original Baddeley and Hitch model, such as the 7+-2 rule controversy. The episodic buffer is thought to be a valuable addition to the working memory model, but its functions have not been thoroughly investigated. There is a lot of evidence for a short memory buffer, as opposed to a long-term store. The stimulation of the left hemisphere, specifically the temporal lobe, appears to be linked to the phonological loop. Depending on the complexity of the task, the visuospatial sketchpad stimulates various areas, less concentrated responsibilities appear in the occipital lobe, while more composite responsibilities appear in the parietal lobe. The location of the central executive is unknown, but it appears to be in the frontal lobes of the brain. With stimulations in both the frontal and temporal lobes and the left-hand part of the hippocampus, the episodic buffer appears to be in both hemispheres, bilateral. The gene has been linked to phonological buffer integrity or duration in genetic studies. This and many other essays are available at studycorgi.com.